just being
You can
like
just say you're
minority
ignoring me,
report.
mate. You can
There
just
we
say
go.
you hate me.
All right. We are now actually live. Let me do our little tutorial, and then we will get started. Welcome, everybody, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour. This is our live magical podcast. We're going to start the official recording in just a moment. Before then, we do a tutorial for those who are watching live either here in Discord. Hi, Drew. Hi, friends. Hi, Thud. Hi, Pat. And for those who are watching live on Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn, hello, welcome. This is about a 45-minute podcast recording. For the first 20 to 25, the two of us, Tim and myself, will be talking to Omar here one-on-one. For the second half of the episode, we will allow the audience to ask questions of Tim. So if you have, excuse me, not of Tim, of Omar, also Tim, I guess.
You can answer too.
If you have questions for either of these wonderful gentlemen, you can drop them in the chat like this. Example question. And mark those for me with a Q emoji if you're in the Discord, because the Discord tends to get more chat, so that helps me find the questions more easily. If you like a question, hit the Q emoji again, and that way we can see that you really want it answered. Omar, you can mostly ignore those questions until we get to the question segment. For any other streaming platforms, you should be able to just drop questions, and I'll be watching there as well, so drop your questions in the chat. All right. I think we're ready to go. Are we ready to go?
I was born ready.
Let me get the podcast recording. And let me get the soundboard started. Okay, and pull up the script.
I'm not gonna do it because I suspect it'll be a headache for you. But I have the option to stop the recording for some reason.
Don't do it. Don't do it, Omar. Don't let the power go to your head.
I can just...
All right, we're ready to start. Here we go. Welcome, indie game dev adventurers, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour, the best dang game dev podcast on the planet.
Today we're being joined by Omar Samir to talk about why passion beats spite in game development.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
If you don't dance along with that podcast intro, you are a sociopath. Welcome to our live magical podcast, where we give listeners the chance to hear real stories of real game development from real indie developers, as well as directly ask them questions about their areas of expertise in the second half of each episode.
This is an unedited recording of a weekly event we host in the Indie Game Academy Discord on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so feel free to swing by for the next one and ask your questions live. There are links to join down below.
We're your hosts, Willem Delventhal, the headmaster of IGA, and the Wizard of Games.
And Tim Wood, founder of Right Finder Headhunting and the Knight of Games Recruitment. And joining us today is Omar Samir, lead developer and self-described perfect man at Buffcore, to talk about why passion beats spite in game development.
This episode sponsored by Raid Shadowlet. I'm just kidding. Welcome, everybody. What are you having for lunch today, Omar?
Yo, it's like 7 p.m. now, so lunch is long past. But I just had a little instant ramen. You know, the classic, the reliable.
Little instant. Did you
Little
crack an
soy
egg
sauce?
in there? Did you
Really?
put some onion in? Just straight instant.
It was instant. I put in some soy sauce, and I wanted to crack an egg in, but out of 4 eggs that I cracked, only one of them was still good. 3 were bad and had to be thrown away.
Oh, God.
And luckily, I don't crack it directly in. I've learned my lesson a long time ago, so
It's a good job you had some extra.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to reveal...
Well, yeah, most of them are messed up.
I'm gonna reveal a story here that maybe will turn all of you against me. Back in high school, so my parents have a sort of a farm. They have chickens, and for a while we had a rooster. And if anyone has ever owned roosters and chickens at the same time before, you know that your roosters will attempt to mate with said chickens, leading to fertilized eggs. So there was one day that I was making a cake for one of my high school classes. It was like some assignment. It's good. It's all good, Tim. It was an assignment. I don't remember why we had to make a cake, but we had to make a cake. And I'm with a buddy, and I crack an egg open, and a 1-inch bloody fetus falls into the cake. And I...
No.
And I, as my typical self, left it to the last second, so I had no time to go and buy more cake batter. So I just scooped the fetus out of and kept the ball rolling. I'm so sorry. And now
That's
you
what
know.
I'm having for lunch. Fetus cake.
Fetus cake.
I've just taken like 50 psychic damage from that. My bad.
I'm so sorry, everyone. Anyway, I've already sidetracked us. Welcome to the show, Omar.
That's perfect.
Yeah. I'm sure
Thank
you can
you for
tell.
having me.
Absolutely, you can tell this is a very serious, special, important podcast about making video games. Today,
Freaking something.
Today, I think the main topic of the episode is talking about how to be a perfect man. Oh no, I'm getting these mixed up. Why passion beats spite in game development.
You just there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, it's almost the same thing. Before we jump into the episode, as always, we like to start the podcast with the origin story. So, Omar, would you please tell us where you are in games today and how you got there?
Right now I'm just sort of bouncing between contracts, just trying to find something more stable. But it all started around like 2017. I graduated from high school one day, and like 2 or 3 days later, I picked up Unreal Engine and started just hit the ground running. And I had a bunch of friends who'd been using the engine for years and years and years, and they just kind of tossed me in the deep end. And I sort of joined a bunch of game jams, joined a bunch of projects, and like, yeah, hit the ground running. Best way to learn is by just doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly after that, I took a sort of a level design gig at Vector Digital, working on a little asymmetrical horror game called Hide or Die. And from there, I transitioned to a community manager role at Vector Digital. Yeah, and I did that until the game launched in 2019, and that was a whole disaster. That we were set up. We were set up, dude. We were jumped. We were not ready for the asymmetrical horror community. So we were eaten alive. And we sunset the game in 2019, brought it back in 2020, sunset it again in 2020.
Wait, when did you launch? When was first launch?
We launched it on August 1st of 2019.
So
and it was a big launch.
It got sunset less than a year?
Yes.
Oh my god.
In fact,
wow.
It was such a travesty because if you still go to this day, you can Steam has archives of the top releases of each month or each year. If you go to the top releases of Steam of August of 2019, Hide or Die is at the very top. It will be the first game you see if you pull it up right now. We had such a big launch. We had such a big Kickstarter. We sextupled our Kickstarter goal and whatever. And we had such a strong launch, and we sunset it a few months after release.
Wow.
Oh.
And we brought it back again. Brought it back in 2020. It was really good. I'm gonna be honest. It was a lot of fun. But people just laughed. It was just the asymmetrical horror community. They're a little high maintenance. God bless their souls.
We love you. Thank you for buying our games. Please continue.
We love you and thank you for buying our games.
All right. And how did you get to where you are now then? Yeah.
Obviously, during all that, I had a back burner project. I'm sure a lot of developers are familiar with just having a back burner project, a little hobby thing you work on. After the cataclysm in 2020, I sort of moved that up forward. That was Buff. Back then, it was just called Buff, nothing else. Until I built a nice little vertical slice, nice beautiful corner of the game. And I shopped it around to a bunch of publishers. I had an amazing pitch deck, a beautiful pitch deck. A pitch deck so beautiful that when I sent it around to publishers, Digerati Publishing came back to me. This was 2022 at this point. They came back to me within 1 or 2 days after I sent it. And they were so happy with it. They were such big fans of the pitch. They were such big fans of the demo. I attached a playable demo. Had the Steam page there too. and within like a week, we'd signed a contract. Everything they sold,
Wow.
like everything they showed was really nice. And I'd spoken with the developers of the games they were showcasing, and they had only nice things to say about Digerati. So I signed with Digerati, I want to say late April. And within 2 days of me signing the contract, the CEO died.
Oh my god.
And I know.
That's
I'm
awful.
so sorry for laughing. Oh my god.
Come on, man.
This story is just insane.
It was genuinely fucking crazy. Can I swear on this? My bad.
PG-13-ish. Yeah, that's where we try to stay.
It was freaking crazy.
Oh my god.
My bad. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I should have asked first.
Tell us more.
But yeah, it was pretty rough. It was a pretty big shakeup, especially because like everything was moving so fast and we hit the ground running, and like everything kind of just slowed down a lot after that. And in the following months,
they kept your contract
I was working
though, right?
Like they did. They kept my contract and they honored my contract for the time being.
Oh my god.
Where like I was moving along full speed ahead, but the company, people were just leaving. They were just losing, dropping employees left and right. So, we kind of hit the reveal. By the time we actually revealed the game and that it had switched from just being called Buff to Super Buff HD, I want to say like 75% of the company was gone.
Wow.
And then sort of the debt took over. And I want to say during 2023, I want to say there was only like 2 or 3 people working at Digerati left. And they had pretty much no money. No one was getting like paid for anything. So for the year leading up to the game's release, there was pretty much zero marketing. There was just no money for it.
Wow.
It was, and I mean, I to an extent, I understand. I forgive them for it. You can't expect someone to put in more than full-time hours and more than full-time effort for zero pay, especially when it's like a no-stakes thing for them. They don't get a cut if the company, pops off, goes big. But yeah, for the year leading up to the release, there was no marketing, there's no money for it outside of, they put out a TikTok every couple of weeks, and it wasn't going great. And then 2 months before release, they put out a TikTok, because all the TikToks they were making were like written as though I was making the TikToks, even though it was just like the marketing manager. And the one they put out 2 months before release was very strongly hinting and very strongly implying that I was going to kill myself. And obviously they did not consult with me about this. They did not tell me about this. But they put that TikTok out and then went completely radio silent for the 2 months leading up to release. I know.
And
Which,
and then what happened?
It flopped. Look, I respect a good marketing stunt, but
oh my god,
I don't. We're not trying to cross the Springfield Gorge here, man. We can play that a little safer, I feel.
Wow.
But thankfully, outside of the sort of financial shortcomings, critically the reception's been great. It's got like 96% on Steam. The people like it. They swear up and down by it. It's been submitted to every GDQ since release, and it just now got accepted for AGDQ 2027. I mean 2026. I'm not.
Wow.
Of AGDQ 2026, and Kotaku put the game on their list of the top 10 boomer shooters of all time, which that's got to be something. I don't think that's officially an award, but that might as well be an award to me,
That is an absolutely wild story. I got to play. So we had our first 24-hour stream. We've done two 24-hour streams for the sake of the Indie Game Foundry Kickstarters. We have our last one coming up, by the way. I'll shamelessly plug that real quick. If you want Willem to play your game live, please feel free to submit right here. But I got to play Super Buff HD on the last stream, and it's a genuinely really fun, goofy boomer shooter. It feels a little like... I keep forgetting the name of this. The game made by some of the South Park devs. Do we know what I'm talking about?
The Stick of Truth?
No.
The Fractured, butthole?
Butthole. It is not that. It's fine. It feels like it's got a really wonderful... Thank you, Christy, as well. It feels like it's got a really wonderful sort of satirical level of humor. So I think what is phenomenal about Super Buff HD is the fact that you still managed to get it out there and build a pretty reputable game, or a pretty like solid game, fun game, while under these absolutely bonkers conditions.
Dude, that's I wish that was even the half of it, but it's not enough time. We're already like 20 minutes in.
Very regular. Wow. I think what's really fun about this, why I'm happy to have this on the show, is because this is a story that you don't hear very often. I think the majority of people who come on the show are either publisher-less, or they've had a publisher and they're one of the bigger names. The game has actually done at least reasonably well. And so having the sort of publisher horror stories that we all hear about, I think it's good. I'm like happy to have you here, Omar. I'm sorry you went through that pain, but thank you for going through it so we can hear about it and ask you questions about it.
Hey, at least it's a good story. At least it makes for a good story.
Absolutely a good story.
Yeah, a wild set of circumstances with them going majorly off script. Is how I'd possibly quantify that.
I understand, because the script was like rapidly going nowhere. Unfortunately, there's only so little you can do. There's only so much you can do with zero money, and I mean, their situation. They have to put in full-time hours for zero pay. Mm-hmm. They're probably just sort of dragged down by other commitments, but
yeah.
Did they still
did not work out?
Was it were you owed amount of money for the game's release? Like, were you getting paid during this time period, or were you also doing this for nothing?
I was supposed to be getting paid sort of like monthly amounts leading up to the game's release, and then they would get 100% of the money during the recuperation period.
Okay.
And then it would be like a profit split.
And so you did get paid that initial amount. They honored that agreement.
We don't talk about that. We don't worry about that.
Okay. That's just absolutely wild. Yeah, I've heard before. I think I've brought it up on the show. I think one of the most horrendous horror stories as far as publisher deals I've ever heard was from a guy who actually works in board games. And he somehow... I think he basically like sold the rights to his name in the publishing deal. I'm not exactly sure how that winds up happening. But one way or another, he lost the rights to his own name. I think maybe he was publishing under his name, and that's maybe what happened, and he just sort of didn't really realize it or something. But he wound up, after this deal going so south, he wound up needing to legally change his name in order to like continue to exist and make board games. So there are definitely some wild deals out there. I think for yours, Omar, probably like you couldn't have seen it coming that the CEO was going to pass 2 days after release, and that the money would completely, 2 days after signing the deal, that the money would completely disappear, or that they would do horrendous things like write posts about suicide, which is just like completely uncouth. Wild experience. It's amazing that you're even here right now talking with us, Omar. Congratulations.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah. What, Omar, throughout all this period, because of course you've been working for yourself for a number of years now, during some pretty tense times in the industry, I think it's fair to say. What's kept you kind of throwing those punches with game dev and making these titles and working your craft? When you dig deep, what is it you're digging into?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna sound like a complete sucker when I say this. I just love video games, man. It is the only industry where I can just work 16, 18 hours a day and not break a sweat, not feel like it. Like everything else is kind of everything else is kind of oppressive. It's kind of you're just feeling every second pass, except for game development, except for when I'm knee deep in the game, working on it, trying to make something that's fun for people out there to play and enjoy. That's I can just work for days on end, just 20 hours a day sometimes, and not even feel it.
Yeah, and I like how you look at that because with my recruitment hat on, I would quantify that answer as you being very passionate about the games industry and about the products you're making for the people. But there's another world where someone might keep going in games out of spite. They're like, well, there's all these layoffs happening and this, that, and the other, and I'm not going to leave. I'm going to do it no matter what. And it's it's the same kind of process, but it's the inherent motivations behind them that are very different. So I like the fact you've chosen the light path there rather than the dark side.
Jedi.
Well, the dark side rears its head in sometimes. There are times where I feel like, oh, what, they think I'm not gonna do it because it's hard. I'm still gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm like the love in me will always win. The passion will always win.
Mm-hmm. That brings you gave us every time we do one of these episodes, everybody, we ask the guest for what they would like to talk about on the show, and we do a little bit of steering if it doesn't quite fit. But for the most part, our topics are created by our guests. So you gave us the topic, why passion beats spite in game development, and I think we're seeing a little bit of the intro already. But I'd love to hear your introduction to that. Like, how would you walk us through? But what did you mean by that? Why did you bring up that as a topic? Why did you want to talk about that?
It's a very personal thing that I see in that every single game developer, like, yeah, you asked why I keep going in game development, why, what keeps me going, what keeps me in it. And I think every single game developer has a core drive, has a core reason that drives them in this industry. And it's a rough industry. It's so Wild West out here. There's barely any rules. There's barely any regulations. It is crazy, and you will never hear the same two stories. You will never hear the same crazy story from two different devs, unless they worked on the same project, obviously. But I just when you're out there, when you're in the middle of it, when you're knee deep in it, you gotta be able to motivate yourself. You gotta be making the game that you want to see, the game that you want to play. And I feel like a lot of times I see devs that they know what they don't want to make, they know the games that they hate, they know the tropes that they dislike, and they're just in it to not make that. I feel like that's a very loose, that's a very loose vision. That's not a very strong direction to take something in.
So this brings to mind, I think I said this in one of our previous 24-hour streams. Maybe I was talking with you, Omar. Forgive me if I'm repeating myself to you. I was working on a life sim, and that life sim's main guiding star, its North Star, was basically doing everything the Sims didn't do and avoiding doing all the things that the Sims did wrong. So you can see exactly what you're talking about. Its North Star was this negative image. Its North Star was, well, we're not going to be the Sims, rather than we're going to be something. This is what we think we're going to be. This is the beautiful thing we're going to be.
Yeah.
Instead, the objective was always about sort of, just being different than the leading game in the genre. And as a result, I think the game really struggled to have any sense of like core identity. And as a result, the game unfortunately wound up getting canceled towards launch. There's a bunch of reasons that happened, and I don't think it's only because of this guiding factor. Honestly, it was still a pretty cool game. But I do think that hurt us, not having this sort of like guiding principle, and instead having like a guiding antagonism or something. Like we're gonna do this because spite, actually, rather than because passion.
Yeah, I like that you bring up the North Star sort of metaphor, because you have to pick your North Star. You can't pick a star and be like, all right, any star except for that one.
Mm-hmm.
There's more stars than grains of sand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what the statistic says.
Yeah.
You gotta know what you're making and then build that. You gotta make that. This is not the story of a game that I worked on, but are you? I don't see pointing the finger guns. But have you guys heard or played Star Wars Jedi Survivor?
Yes. Yeah. So I had to do a little mental
know.
Rolodex then of games I played.
There's a lot
recently.
of Star Wars games. I was like, which one's that? Yes.
But you're like, I have a friend who worked on that game, and the stories that he says, like about the vision, about Stig Asmussen's vision for the game was so strong. The whole game was made in 3 years.
Wow.
I think maybe even a little less than 3 years. And the game is huge, and the game is beautiful, and it plays so well. But because the vision was so strong, it all just sort of fell into place, because you know where you put every building block that you're using. You know exactly where it's going to go. You know exactly when it's going to go there. That's and I think that scales like so well from indies to big AAAs, one of the biggest companies in the world, EA. It will just scale no matter what.
Yeah.
Probably with exceptions, only Sith deals in absolutes or whatever, but that's.
Yeah. So, speaking of absolutes, I think we're all agreeing quite nicely that passion is generally better than spite whenever you're doing any kind of creative endeavor. But can spite ever be a valid fuel source for these endeavors? You know, is there a time where it could be useful, or it could create something genuinely wonderful? And I know this is a subjective answer as well, coming from us all here, because we'll all have different opinions. But what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was, I want to say like 2 years ago, I read Reggie Fils-Aimé's book, Disrupting the Game. And probably my main takeaway from that is every single thing in, business or games or marketing or whatever, he breaks down into the smallest individual components of what it is. So if you, say you hate a game mechanic, just like in your head, try to break down every single part of it until you find the parts that you do hate, and maybe take a game mechanic that you hate. For me, it's ads and boss fights. Little enemies that sort of distract you from the flow of the boss fight. And you break down why you hate them, and you break down why they're there, like what the devs could possibly be trying to do with them. And once everything is back down, reduced to its core ingredient, I think you can rebuild it in a way that you love.
That's interesting. I think so. As a designer in particular, a huge part of my job is creating cohesive creative direction. So getting us all to agree that we're heading towards this North Star, and then adapting that as we get further along, the game's journey. And I think it's a really interesting question that you pose, actually, Tim. Can a game be good that's based on spite? I think a game can be good that's based on just about any human emotion, as long as it makes that decision and sticks to it. There are games out there. The first one that comes to mind, actually, this is from a while ago now, but there was a game called That Dragon Cancer. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, it is horrifying and painful and beautiful. It's a game made by a father who lost his newborn child to cancer. And the entire game's purpose is to try to get the player to feel what his father is feeling. It basically was emotional. It was therapy for the dad when he was making it. He had a GDC talk that you could probably look up. And the game is horrendously painful. It is not a fun experience. It was not based on passion, although I guess you could call it passion actually, probably. It was instead based on pain, though. It was a game about expressing and building towards pain. And the game is beautiful as a result. It's not something that somebody would pick up on a Tuesday afternoon when they need to chill, but for those who decide that they want to experience this pain, they absolutely are getting that out of the game. So I would argue that you can make a game based off of any emotion, which could be spite, but that the passion for that emotion needs to be there. The passion is what uplifts it and turns it into something worth playing. The developer needs to feel whatever they're attempting to make the player feel, I think. I would postulate. Yeah. What do you two take away from that?
I think that's a very well put answer, mate. To be honest, I think it's the indecisiveness in, I guess, in any product that leads to it usually falling down, because it in a way it's trying to cater to everyone, and it then ends up catering to no one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, good point, well made.
Amazing. Tim, I know you've prepared about 1.5 million questions for us. Do you have another to take us down?
I've burned through some of my spicy ones. So with Superbuff HD, how much of the game's success do you feel came from your kind of creative problem solving and the passion within your team versus kind of external pressures pushing you to that strong place in development?
I mean, this may be not a very, this might not be a very sort of like kind-hearted opinion, but
get spicy.
I think art is just never done. You just have to pick when to put the pencil down. At some point, you have to just force yourself to be like, all right, it's done. Pencils down, hand in your answers. And that's never very confident. That's never very easy. But the external stimuli, when there's 1,000 fires under you, that's a very strong motivator to not only get it out the door, but to break down everything. Oh, I gotta do this. I gotta do that. I gotta make this many things in this amount of time. And it's important for games to be art. It's important to express an emotion. It's important for games to express and represent the people that are making said game.
Yeah.
But at some point, the people making said game have to eat, and their families have to eat, and they have to pay rent. So at some point, it has to be made. It has to come out. It has to meet some expectations. It can't be. You can't just send the players, the repository, the project files, and be like, hey, look at everything I've made. You got to put it in a package. You got to give it to people. And the external motivation, the sort of publisher horror stories and sort of real life economics, real world economics, they are the greatest motivator, unfortunately.
Yeah. It brings to mind, there's a quote that I think was originally uttered about poetry, but has been applied to like every single craft that there is. Games are never finished, only abandoned. It's a weird feeling, because that's absolutely the truth. Every game. Yeah, probably right. I think it was Plato. Just about every game I've ever worked on never really was finished. It just, at some point, somebody said, we're not going to support this anymore. And some of them still exist as downloads, but the majority of them have just, disappeared into the ether, which is a bizarre aspect of working in digital art or digital media.
Well, I'm really feeling the effects of that these days. I mean, last year I've been sort of mostly surviving off writing contracts, and this year that's sort of been drying up. Trying to put together portfolios and a nice resume or whatever. I'm like, all right, well, this game got shut down. This game got sunset.
Yeah.
And it's hard to show, oh, here's a real world example of stuff that I've written that you can go out and play, because it just doesn't exist anymore. You got to find like the wiki page. You got to find YouTube videos of it.
Yeah, I'm seeing that a lot in a lot of particularly writing portfolios. It's like, yeah, for the last 6 years I've been doing this. It's all under NDA and I can't show you any of it. Here's a project I started in my spare time just so I have some up-to-date evidential stuff that I've done. And that is replicated across art and other disciplines where there's a finished product you got to look at the end, and it's weird. it's very strange at the moment.
I was going to ask you, Tim. I'm glad that you commented on this, because as a recruiter, I'm curious. Like, is this what you see for everybody? Is it because I feel like I have a similar experience. I'm able to point to stuff. Yes, they existed. I document well, which is a tip for everybody listening. Take lots of pictures. Take lots of videos. Anything that the company releases publicly, you are allowed to showcase. So if you find videos, if you find pictures, and for the most part, if your game gets canceled, especially if you go and ask and make sure it's okay, you can still show some of the work that you contributed. Make sure you are documenting, because this is a reality of this medium, not even of the industry. It's just like how digital art goes. It's going to disappear at some point. So make sure you have copies, videos, and anything else that you can put together to make sure you don't lose these games, and you can always point back to them. But I'm curious for you, Tim, is that something that you're seeing on a regular basis? I feel the same way. Like my last 2 professional projects, I finally just actually, like, in 3 days, am launching a game for reals. But it's getting launched to the meta marketplace, which, I don't know, they could shut down like next year. So, what happens? Yeah. What happens for recruitment right now?
So it can go a couple of ways. Sometimes people have permission to share what they've worked on if a game's been cancelled, and that's totally fine. It might be on their portfolio or something like that. In some cases, if the entity that owns the kind of NDA rights and that kind of thing is still in existence, you can sometimes agree kind of hey, like, I've got an interview with XYZ studio, and you can arrange like a one-to-one NDA or something with that company, so you can still share those resources. It is not something that I would ever condone, but I have heard stories of people just doing an outright screen share in an interview to be like, hey, here's some bits and bobs that I've done. In most cases, a lot of people's ability and work has been judged on, right, here's some personal stuff that they've done recently. We know they were working on this type of game at this level, or a sequel to this game, or working in this kind of genre, and a studio will put them through the interview process and take a chance on them, or they might issue something like a test. So you're going to see more reliance on tests and things like that. Studios are, well, they've always done this, but I've noticed increasingly, more reliance on things like referrals as well. So if someone already at the studio is like, hey, Tim Wood's a great person for this, then that carries a lot of weight, certainly if portfolios are quite light. And for people listening who are in a position where they're looking for jobs, William's totally right. It's document everything as you do it. Something I advise anyone in any industry is that you should be updating your CV every 3 months or so with what you've been doing, delivering and achieving. Not only is that a great way to keep track of what you've done and remember it in your master CV file, but if the worst ever happens, you'll be immediately ready to enter the world of work again and, hunt for those jobs. So kind of I would advise people to just operate as if you are at risk. You have that belt and braces approach and you should be fine. But, companies will always ask for materials if they want to see more from you. I've had some people who've just outright created something new for that studio, even though it's not a test. They're like, hey, look, I know you need these kinds of dialogue examples, which I can't provide you. I've just written a scene using your IP. Here you go, kind of thing. So that can work quite well and is generally quite helpful to these studios as well.
I operate as if you are at risk is like, I think, the most depressing statement that I've heard ever on this show. So thanks, Tim.
Yeah. Well, very welcome. It won't help, but like even I update my CV every 3 months, and I run my own business. I'm not going to fire myself. But if they made recruitment agencies illegal, which my argument, I guess.
First they came for the recruiters.
I've got options. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, so I want to make sure. It is such a tricky. It's one of the things that is like rough about this industry. It's wild. It's wild working in this space, and I'm a stubborn bastard about it. Like I will never leave games, despite the challenges. But there are undeniably challenges. We're seeing them. I don't think anybody is aloof to the fact that there are challenges in this space, and one of the biggest ones is actually finding paid work, and secondarily, like discoverability in general, whether you're working on your own project or for somebody else. Games fail so often because they simply don't pick up an audience, even though many of them are wonderful experiences. Now, I want to make sure that we get a little bit more, we juice you a little bit more before we get out of here, Omar. So I've got a follow-up question for you. The balance of passion versus spite is what I would love to hear about in your opinion. So, or maybe more accurately, we're talking about that external pressure, the sort of realities of making money from your games. I work with so many juniors and so many indies, and one of the biggest like problems, I don't know if it's necessarily a problem, but like maybe just characteristics of indies and juniors is the fact that they want to do it for the love. They want to do it for the passion. And anything that runs contrary to that desire winds up being looked down upon. So doing it for the business, doing it for the money is like incredibly important, but it doesn't have that same romantic indie, motivation that doing it for the passion does. So how do you balance the pragmatic, practical sides of game development, making money, doing your finances, hitting your deadlines, with doing it for passion? Because those two things are hard to balance. There's going to be days where you're just not passionate.
Man, I'm trying to answer that myself every day. How am I supposed to answer this?
I was hoping you had all the secrets.
I don't have all the secrets. I'm still in the deep end. It's weird. It's hard. Like I can't network with people very well. It's anytime I talk to someone and I feel like, oh, maybe I'll get work out of this. It feels like I'm talking with someone to benefit myself, to monetarily benefit myself.
Mm-hmm.
It feels illegitimate. It feels weird, and I don't like doing it. It was. Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer here that can benefit the good people watching, because I'm still trying to learn this. I wish I didn't have to do this for money, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Egypt is not doing very good. This is the only thing that can support my family, basically. But God, I try to stick to it, and it's hitting everyone a lot, because there is a pressure. Everyone wants to make the game that they want to make, but there is this sort of pressure. Have you heard the term like friend slop for games like Lethal Company or Repo?
Oh yeah, I actually just heard it for the first time the other day. Yeah. What is define friend slop for the viewers real quick?
Friend slop, in my opinion, is a genre of games that is sort of leaning on like the lower budget side of things, where the game can be made in maybe a year or a couple years, and it has a heavy emphasis on multiplayer, like playing it with your friends, and it's very appealing to streamers. That's really the big part of it. It's got amazing streamer appeal.
Mm-hmm.
And the games, I mean, any game you play with your friends is going to be fun. You're just having a good time with your friends.
Yeah.
And
friend slop, as I've heard it defined, is like these sort of I say this with all the love in the world, being a game developer myself, these sort of like crappier visual aesthetics oftentimes. Like, it sort of looks and feels lower budget, but it's a fun social experience. That's how I've heard Friendswap defined. So like the Peaks, the Lethal Companies, etc., that are easier to make, are a fun social engagement, and therefore publishers like love them right now because like, oh, they can make that in 6 months and make me $7 million like Lethal Company. Please, let's do it. Even though, of course, 99.9%
they're kind of a symptom. They're a symptom of where the industry is right now. You know, I was at a conference about a year ago, and there was a talk from a developer there that was like, look, we're looking for like a sub 500k investment, and we're looking for a shorter time frame and something that will succeed. And, you know, the recipe of quote unquote friend slop, it just hits all the right notes to, you know, go to the money tree, shake it, and walk away being able to pay your mortgage for the next year or two. So I can totally see why they're running, but also I myself, I don't mind those types of games because I know for sure they're going to run on my PC. You know, I think they're also they're catering to the target market that don't maybe have the latest gaming PC or this, that, and the other, and also have friends. I don't play them very much because I have like 2 friends that are online the same time zone as me in the evenings most of the time. So, you know, but it's certainly interesting to see how these markets have kind of evolved into what the smorgasbord of viable games has turned into.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because, Alec here has a funny definition of friendslop I would like to read. Alec says, games that rely on players to make the fun through finding bugs. Genius. Beautiful. I don't have any problem with friendslop. I love Peak. I played the hell out of it with my brothers. I really loved Lethal Company. I loved Phasmophobia. I don't have any problem with these game types. I think in some way they're actually indicative of the time period we're in emotionally as a species. We're all tired and overworked, and like, God, like there's just so much going on constantly to get our attention. And so to have something that's just like stupid and fun, it works great. You know, I don't have to think deeply. I don't have to have emotional feels. I just laugh when my brother falls down a cliff and screams, and then his voice cuts off. You know, like, great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anyway, I want to make sure that we have some good time to close there. So, Omar, do you have anything else to give us in terms of finding that balance? Or do you feel like, you know, I'm really not sure still?
I mean, just I would say, I guess, work backwards. That's what I've been trying to do, is think of a game that would be appealing to streamers, or the game that would be appealing to a lot of people. And yeah, like I said earlier, break down what you might dislike about that game or why you might not want to make that type of game, and then work backwards until you can be making a game that you want to make, a game that you like, a game that you're passionate about, but will still appeal to streamers, will still appeal to that will look like, you know, very, very, very attractive to just normal, regular people that don't, you know, that you can just grab people with a GIF.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
That streamability. It is. I think it's a bit of an impossible balance. Because it's funny, you're like, man, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure that out too. I don't think any of us quite have it down. Maybe like Aggro Crab, they seem to have it down. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I think a large part, I think it's really easy to look at games that succeed and be like, all right, now I have the formula figured out. But always remember your survivorship bias. For every one game that succeeds, there are 1,000 of them of the same or comparable quality that did not succeed. And there are definitely like tangible reasons that games don't succeed, but in large part it's sort of luck of the draw, and it's one of the reasons that we believe in releasing games quickly and getting them done and getting them out there. I dropped a meme on LinkedIn recently of the bell curve of, like, you know how like the front and the end are the beginner and the genius, and the middle is the intermediate who's like a tryhard. I feel like I'm on the other end of the bell curve where I don't believe in as many of the like the pragmatic stuff, the practical stuff. I think it's important to know that your audience exists. I think it's important to prove that there are real people who want your game. I think it's important to test concepts and see that there's enthusiasm and excitement outside of your team. But I also think that at the end of the day, all of that matters a lot less than your team being pumped to make this game. I think
Yeah.
if your team is just pumped, is excited about making a game, they're going to put in more hours. They're going to make more creative art. They're going to have a fun, stupid time when they put out social media posts. That energy is infectious. And I think, like, you know, do your homework, do your finances, like test out your games, and then find one that both seems promising, and then more importantly, that your team is just like, hell yes, I want to make this. That's my opinion. I don't know if I'm right, but it feels like I'm right. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I think anytime you're excited to do something creatively, it people are going to be able to kind of taste that in the product. I think about it when I'm working with studios recruiting for them. You know, if I'm pumped about the game and I'm really excited about it, and the hiring managers are, when I talk to candidates, they're like, "Wow, like this sounds dope. I can't wait." And that's kind of why I work with the clients I do. I don't work with studios that I'm not interested in because I can't sell them authentically. When I'm writing, it's because I want to write a story or a piece that I am invested in and excited to do. And Omar, I'm sure you're the same with your own kind of personal creative pursuits as well.
It's I mean, it kind of relates to the I don't think I can mention any of the stuff we were talking about, you and me, last year, but
yeah, we'll keep it anonymous because of NDAs, but yeah.
that kind of subconsciously, I knew I wasn't a perfect fit, and that, to me, like, that was the only time in my life that I got writer's block. Pretty much every single other time that I've had a job to do or a writing contract or anything, I did that sort of, you know, break everything down to its most basic level, and I just made it work. I sort of changed the parameters. I worked within my limits to do work that I loved, that I was very passionate about. There was a big part of that last year where I kind of subconsciously knew that I was not the perfect fit for this.
Yeah.
And it was like a writing test for 2 weeks, and it was the hardest 2 weeks of my life, and I could not sleep.
Yeah.
I broke my sleep. I was just like up for days at a time. I was not able to sleep physically. And I got it out. I wasn't proud of it. And I think they could tell. I think they could tell in the final result.
But even for a piece with writer's block and all of that, it was still pretty damn good, I have to say. So, you know, take that with you. I know we can't talk about the specifics. We can catch up one-to-one after. But, you know, as a baby writer myself, I was like, yeah, these some good words. I like the order that he's put them in.
I think maybe we do have to start wrapping up, so we're going to do the outro here in just a moment. But last point I'll throw in there, actually, this is not at all an admonishment, Omar, but just a skill for everyone to practice, really. I think one of the things you also get better at is like finding the passion. Because I've worked on so many games that's like, I'm working on a fashion game right now. There's no way that 12-year-old Willem would have been like, oh, I just really want to make a fashion game. Like, that's the thing. But you know what? I have had a fantastic time making this game because I have found the parts of it that I connect with and that are exciting and passion building for myself. So I think that is its own skill, and I think it's just about like finding the parts of a project that you do care about and that you're excited to show people and excited to get them working on. I for instance, like love UGC, so creating something that people get to express themselves in is fun basically no matter what the project is. So there's going to be those aspects of game development that you yourself care about, and if you can find sort of the kernels, the DNA of those in your current projects will shine brighter as a result of you finding your own passion for it. All right, now that is going to wrap us up for the day, but before we go, we like to do two different things here, Omar.
So first, Omar, do you have any extra credit that our listeners can do in the coming week or so to apply what they've learned here today?
I do, actually. I did think about this. I do want people to sort of exercise of taking a game mechanic or a trope or any sort of recurring thing they see in media that they hate, that they just despise, sort of turns their smile upside down, turns into a frown every time they see it. Try to break it down and make a positive version of it. Make a version of it that they like.
I
For
like
example, I mentioned earlier, my example was ads in boss fights. And one of my favorite games of all time, Doom Eternal, has ads in every single boss fight. But the entire game is built around enemies in such a way that they're kind of a treat, they're a delight.
Nice. All right, so to repeat that, your task is to take a mechanic or trope that you typically dislike and reframe it in a way where you could like it. And if you're up for it, why not make that a post on LinkedIn or in the IGA Discord or on one of the other social channels and tag us in it so we can have a look at those ideas, because I'm sure they'll be wonderful.
I'm trying to think of mine. I am because I think I've worked in educational games, I'm a stickler for good tutorials. So I'm trying to think like I hate tutorials that are too hand-holdy. So what is the positive version of a hand-holdy tutorial? Like maybe it's like a whole sim game about tutorials or something like that. That's the joke, that it never lets you leave. It's always teaching you new things. All right, where are we at now? All right, yes, of course. Omar, before we say goodbye, we'd like to give you a chance here to drop any last words of wisdom or to plug anything you would like to plug. What you got?
I mean, right now I'm just bouncing between projects. I've kind of laid the groundwork for a new game that I'm working on. It's not quite ready to announce yet. Doesn't have a Steam page. Doesn't have like a dedicated any social media accounts. But keep an eye on the socials. I will usually be at iDreadman on most things. That is IDREDMAN. And that's where I conduct my business. That's where I do my best stuff. That's where I post stuff.
Amazing. Any last words of wisdom for us?
Yeah. Do eat the yellow snow, actually. It's lemonade. It's lemonade snow.
What?
They got yellow clouds in the sky and they make lemonade snow. Do eat the yellow snow.
I'm going to formally disagree with Omar's last words of wisdom to make sure it's on record. Follow.
In a metaphorical sense.
Yeah.
And don't make a fetus cakes.
But do eat your fetus cakes, everyone. They're high in protein. Let's see. So you can check out Omar. We'll drop some links down below. He is at iDread, D-R-E-D, man, M-A-N, the perfect man, as I have come to understand it. And of course, check out Superbuff HD. Consider giving it a purchase. It's under $10. I think that's going to do it. Tim, do we have anything else?
No, just thank you so much, Omar, for having lunch with us today, and for you all at home or at work for listening.
Absolutely.
Thank you all so much for having me.
Heck yeah. Thank you, Omar. We are here every single Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so come and join us for the next one. There are links to join the Discord down below. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Woo!
Game over.
Goodbye, everyone. All right, and to our live viewers, go!